If you're an occupational therapist who feels like you should have it all figured out by now, but don't, you're not alone. Welcome to the OT Coaching Confidential. This podcast is a little different to most. Each episode is a real mentoring conversation with an occupational therapist somewhere in Australia, navigating their own professional growth. I'm Alyce, a paediatric OT and founder of the OT Coach Australia, and this week I'm joined by Jane, an experienced occupational therapist working in a Grade 3 leadership role within the public health space, while also running her own private practice. In this conversation, we explore the realities of stepping into leadership, supervising your team, navigating difficult conversations, and balancing the different roles that come with clinical work, supervision, and service development. Now let's get started. Welcome, Jane. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about how you became the OT that you are today.
I have dabbled in lots of things over my 20 plus years of being an OT, starting out in a really nice grade 1 rotation, which I think really built some good foundations for me. But perhaps looking back, jumped the gun a little bit too much, jumping into that grade 2 role, thinking, yeah, I can do what they do. But in that time then, I've pretty much stayed in grade 2 roles and then more in probably been the last 3 years, gone into a grade 3 role, supervising, growing, having a private practice on the side. That's just been myself, which I really enjoyed the challenges of building my own business, but really missed the connection with other OTs. So that really prompted the move back into a team setting and into that leadership role.
Can you maybe just explain a little bit? Because I find a lot of therapists who haven't had any health experience don't know about grades, don't know what that looks like in the health space, that there is grades, like lots of conversations around you actually can't just walk into a level 2 role. There's specific job criteria and responsibilities and things like that. So what does that, when you say like grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, what does that sort of contextually mean?
So grade 1 was really about making that transition from student into a clinician, and what does that mean, and the responsibility you carry for your clients, but also then building those skills around clinical reasoning and intervention development with the support of the grade 2 around you or your supervisor, whoever that may have been. And so you're really wanting to solidify those skills that you learned as a student and build your confidence and competence in that clinical space.
Are you typically only there for a year and then you transition, like you naturally become a grade 2, or you have to be promoted into a grade 2 role? What does it look like that?
Typically promoted. There needs to be a gap in a grade 2 role for you to move into. My experience has been it's often to do with funding, that they don't have the funds in public health to necessarily just promote you automatically, but your pay structure does go up in the increments depending on your award anyway. As a title, your grade 1 is really about that kind of beginner therapist. Grade 2, you're in the middle there, you're supporting those junior therapists. You might be supporting students as well, supporting AHAs, allied health assistants in that clinical setting. And you can move more into that service development, quality projects, and just step up that little bit more as a grade 2.
Do you, like, when you're saying this, do you know that many people in the industry don't know that these are things as you're thinking about this?
Look, recently a conversation with a grade 1, a goal that she'd set with me was, I want to move into a grade 2 role by the end of the year. I just wanted to highlight to it, that's great, but you don't necessarily get a choice just to be a grade 2 because you want to. Did then just highlight perhaps a goal's more around building your capacity and being an appropriate candidate for a grade 2 position.
So it's interesting.
Not a given that you just get to say, yes, I want that now and expect it. So
because this is so different in the private sector, right? Like you can just go in and say, if you don't give me a pay rise, I'm going to leave. If you don't retitle me, I'm going to leave. Like it's so, I was thinking as you were saying, like a 20 plus year experience, the marketplace would have looked so different in those early years. It was hard to get work, right?
Yes,
it was hard to get a job.
A few rejections in there, yes.
Absolutely. You actually had to apply and they actually got to pick from candidates. It wasn't just you walked in, and it was a really different space. And then, so tell us about the level 3 role. So level 3 is when you become a supervisor and you have responsibility more specifically, hours allocated to that and all of that sort of stuff.
So typically the title might be senior clinician, might be team leader, and that might depend on the role position description. Often, if you're in that role full time, there will be a division between a clinical load and kind of a leadership role. Personally, I was able to negotiate to just pick the leadership part because I wanted to keep my own clinical load privately, and I didn't want to have to take on the burden. I was very lucky, I think very fortunate that the managers recognised that it's worth a try. So that's how it's panned out for the last 3 years, that I just work a couple of days in that role and the rest of the week privately. So it is a bit of a juggle being in two spaces. They are complementary, obviously one private and one public, but similar population.
What's your workload look like? So in your grade 3 role, how many team members do you have? What is your responsibilities in this space? What does that all look like?
So we've built up the team to be 12 now, which is significant from when I first took it on. I think there was about 7. A large part-time team, which has its own challenges.
I was going to say, it would absolutely come with its own trickiness. Yeah.
And as the team has grown, but my hours haven't, obviously I'm spreading myself more thinly as well, which brings up different challenges for me about how can I be there for everyone, but still do the other parts of the role that I'd like to do. Days often involved supervision, formally supporting team, but as well as that informal contact. This has happened, and how do we deal with the little fires?
The person that they'd go to for any clinical spot fiery type stuff.
Yes, definitely.
What about day-to-day challenges? Is it mostly clinical that they're coming to you with, or is it management stuff?
It's operational as well. Yeah.
So
I've become the person in between.
Just the go-to. You're everyone's person.
Yeah, I don't want to say meat in the sandwich because I feel like that's negative. I think it's an important role to be that the communicator between, where I can see the perspective from management and what they're needing to do for them, but then trying to translate that into a clinical,
as well as still being that space. So in Michelle Bahari's work, they would call it that line management and clinical supervision.
Yes.
But you've got it both smooshed together.
Yes. So often that's been my challenge when I do have that supervision. Okay, it's supervisee directed. Let's just create that space for them.
And let's not address all these other things.
And then in my mind, it's like, all right, I'll email you later.
That's so tricky. So with your staff, have you got regular supervision with them? Are they weekly, fortnightly, monthly, random? What does that look like?
I think we have a really embedded structure of supervision, which I think is really good. And that's organisation wide, not just for my team, but as a whole OT team that's very strongly supported across our organisation. And so in line with that, and I think in line with the OTA guidelines, everyone meets that requirement if they're part-time or full-time. So everyone should. Definitely my supervisees, we have our monthly sessions booked out for the year. We have a template to support us and then have that contract in place where we should be clear on our expectations about preparing and being engaged in that process. So I have my ones that I supervise, and then some of the other grade 2s will supervise the HAs and go down.
So they're mostly on monthly, or do you have a few of them that are more frequent, earlier career ones, so like fortnitly, or most of them are?
No, I would say they're all monthly. Even our grade 1, I think she's probably in her third year maybe. And so over time her experience is built up, and she's happy with that monthly arrangement, but also drawing on the team's experience, whoever's around. So
I guess I'm asking from how are you managing all of your face-to-face commitment with them? So thinking about if you've got the 12 of them and you've got the monthly, how does that look like across your 3 days? Is it that you've clustered them, or I would imagine that probably a bit more scattered, given that there's a heavy part-time workforce, so you've got to capture them when they are there?
Yeah, predominantly I protect Thursdays. Ideally, that's my supervision day. I think there's 5 or 6 out of that team that I then personally supervise, and then the rest of the team support the grade 1 and the AHA. At the moment, I feel like that's manageable. Except we have support at home has just been introduced. So now we've added that to my plate of adding a new funding stream into a service that's never provided it just in my 2 days. So, that's really been about managing our managers' expectations about how much we create and how much I'm pushing. But I need you to sort this out because I can't. And that's really been helpful from my business experience. It's like, you sort out what you're billing.
Absolutely. Like I was going to say, imagine if you didn't have that private headspace to know how to learn something new and really embed yourself in a new funding stream and understand all of that. But I was wondering, as you were saying that, how hard it would be when you're in that switched headspace to go, I actually only have to learn this stuff whilst I'm at work.
Yeah.
I don't have to go deep diving in this in my personal time because that's my role is to be paid for my learning and understanding of this. How do you do that? Are you good at that? Or is that
Probably because I am a bit of a learning geek. I don't mind diving into a manual at home time to get my head around the latest, but I do intentionally try to not take on that as a responsibility, but more as a choice. So
that's great.
if I do it, fantastic. If not, then I go back to the team or to the manager. I need you to explain this to me because I don't get it.
Right. So what are they expecting from you? That you set up the service, develop the clinical pathways, and then train everybody up so they can do it?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah.
What and breaking that down, I have 2 grade 2s now as clinicians in that role. So I'm also empowering them to say, okay, help us work out together what this could look like. Because they obviously have a lot more capacity than I do being in a new role without a long waiting list. It's like, you guys need to take ownership of what this could look like. Let's try things, give me feedback. And we're really taking that collaborative approach. Let us get our OT stuff in order and then go back to the managers going, this is how we think we want to work.
Yeah.
And let them
is it
tell
challenging? Like with I suppose sometimes we see this when health practitioners come into the private sector, that having a time frame on things can be really tricky. And I guess under that model, there's very minimal time to be able to spend on things. So is the team finding that challenging, or because it's quite fresh, they can just do it and then figure it out?
Too early to tell. We're probably 3 weeks in from seeing referrals. So I think it's still too early, but it's definitely that messaging. And one of the clinicians does come from a private background experience. So that's, I think, also a benefit for them to already be knowing that if we're driving further and they're not billing,
then we can't.
They're not changing their billing as that's coming out of their bucket of money somehow. And do they understand the impact for the client? So it's a bit of an education piece for the care partners and the managers about what their decisions are, the impact of those decisions have. Yeah, and I'm trying to have that approach of let's work it out together because it's new for us all. Historically, they just went to external OTs. So that process I'm familiar with, but support at home is new. Having internal OTs is new. Managing those expectations on how responsive we can be.
And are they full-time in that, or they're a couple of days in that?
Yeah, both part-time. So so they'll overlap, but I think the positive is that there's 2 of them, so they can support each other as well, given I'm not that available, that they're that support for each other. So I feel like that was a good decision to build in that support framework for them.
I wonder sometimes, I think in a lot of health services, this is done really beautifully where those clinical pathways are developed quite cleanly. And I think you think in that way of first this, then this, and it's really clear to develop that. Is that what is your day-to-day involvement in this? You've got a lot of headspace thinking about it, but what is your practical, the things that I, Jane, have to do or take away? Because it's murky, sounds murky at the moment. So it's just sucking a bunch of time and headspace at the present.
I think at the moment it's been more probably that contact person about how it's evolving. Probably didn't help that I've just had some annual leave, so they were left to flounder. You do you guys, and I'll see you when I come back. But prior to the accepting referrals, we talked a lot about what it would look like from a day-to-day point of view from their perspective as a clinician, and tried to convey that message to management. And I think going forward, I'll just be that regular contact person. How are you finding it? Okay, let's go back up the ladder, see are they having their needs met, and what do we need to tweak in between? So I think it will
ultimately it will get there.
It will get there. Yeah, I'm positive, and the clinicians are positive and excited about it as a new opportunity. So I think they're real assets to it.
And so many therapists, if they were being put into this new space, would be like, oh no, I've got to fix. This sounds like a really positive, exciting thing to be working on, as much as it's a clunky system, but it's also a blessing that it's a new system. So you don't know how it used to look. So we're only working in how it looks now.
Yes. And I think one of the other positives is we we opened it up to the existing team and no one expressed an interest.
Yeah.
So they didn't bring their
Yep.
preconceived way of
Yes.
working with them.
Yep.
New therapists to the team, clean slate, new
Yep.
habits, new processes.
That's so good.
So yeah, I'm excited about how it will pan out. And yeah, hopefully in 12 months' time, we can look back and go, yeah, look at what we're
Are you doing something formal in terms of like outcome measuring it?
The intention will be to probably more on that clinical level. I think in terms of service evaluation, I don't have a plan for that other than I'm good at capturing numbers. So give me a spreadsheet and I can tell you how many days it took on average to respond. That's the kind of data that I'm hoping we'll capture.
Yeah. I wonder even just prior to that, whether it would be handy to capture, have something that you're more strategically checking in with the team about as you're having those intentional check-ins each week, each fortnight, maybe across the processes prior to the external capture, but internally, is this going well? Do we need to tweak it? That's working really well. Great. This next step, that's where we're finding the fall down point. But that might just an internal service reviewy type thing that might be helpful just to contain your headspace in it as well. So I just find sometimes we get, particularly when you're caught up in the clinical side of setting something up, we get caught up in the clinical efficiency and effectiveness, but maybe skip the how well the systems are working and what that's looking. We do. And you and I can probably just look at that and do that really easily. But then if something needs tweaking, it seems harder to do because it's all encompassed together rather than treating it as two separate sort of pathways.
Yeah, sure. Something to consider.
Yeah.
How do we measure our progress? It's on that strategy service level, isn't it? What are we trying to achieve?
It's at this point when they're giving you feedback, it's more explicit around how is the program itself running rather than the outcomes of participants. Like, how did that look like? Is that, and then later you've already got what you want to capture properly to hand and feed upwards.
Yeah, so it's an outcome measure at a service level,
which we're really good at, outcome measures. We just don't often apply it in this regard. And I think because sometimes we're so pragmatic in the way that we think it just makes sense, right? You and I can look at that and go, that's not working, that's not working, that's not working. But because you are in that sandwich position, it gives you more confidence to go, so then we did this and here's where this is.
Yeah, and that's definitely the value piece, isn't it? If you can demonstrate this is where we've come, I think that's always reassuring because obviously I'm also thinking big picture. We've introduced this to one site. So our team is hybrid, part home, part in the office, but we're across 3 sites across the city. So this is in one site and I'm fairly confident if we are successful at this, then there'll be pressure to repeat it. Yeah, I think part of my motivation is, okay, I want to do it smoothly and do it well and iron it out now. So it's very clear what we need and who would be a good fit for that role if we had to.
Just thinking the same thing. Like, I wonder, even in this framework, you might be going, what could be the challenges if we didn't have these types of therapists? Because that is the challenge, right? If you're working with an amazing team and you set up a service, it's not always replicatable because the other therapists that we pull in don't work as quickly, don't have that same level of competence, like those other bits and pieces. So I was just thinking as you were saying that, maybe that's the other bit as you are looking at those processes, just to flag, if we didn't have this great clinician who's doing this independently, showing initiative, would this still be sustainable?
Yeah, it's a good point because then I'm already in my mind, I'm thinking position description. I don't think we even have a position description for this new service. So I have to write that, but then within that too, those kind of soft skills that you can't necessarily make explicit in a position description,
really
the vibe you're looking for. How do I put that in words? And that's just recruitment challenges for sure.
Absolutely. With the changes that we're seeing from a profession-wide perspective over the next few years, we might see changes where we can pick who we're hiring. And there's a number of people, particularly in health, right? People are applying and there are numerous people you can pick from. We're not seeing that in any other space at the minute, but in health, we still do have a good amount of candidates going for roles. So you can really try and look for that person that will align really nicely.
And I think, if that ended up eventuating in that time, support at home may have settled down. The aversion to it may reduce a little bit as well, because I think that was my concern in the beginning. Who wants to take on this headache? But
yes. I think the other benefit, though, in the health space is you're going to potentially have private practitioners who just want to not have to think about it and just do the work.
Yeah.
So potentially there's going to be quite a few candidates in that
Yes.
space that potentially have the skills, but it was just too hard to get the contracts. It wasn't paying what it was paying before. But you guys sit at a pretty good pay point. So again, the candidates might be really strong moving forward.
Yeah, I can be hopeful.
Yeah,
and I think
positive thoughts.
I think too, like the site that it would go to next, I think that would be a good area. It's a bit of a sea change area. And I think OTs down there, they stay in the area. And if they want to move between private and public, then
then there would be an interesting option.
Might give us a good pool to select from. But I would hope that I can at least have 12 months to get this right before but I don't know if I'll have the luxury of pushing back on that. We'll see.
It's so nice though, listening to you be able to have that headspace. We were just chatting before the recording started about how many random projects I've got going on. I have none of that headspace. I'm just like, go, let's get this. And then it's me. And then get that going. So it's so beautiful to be able to roll out a program in a really conscientious way and think about it and have the time and the headspace and funding behind you to be able to do that. Yeah. And you can appreciate that because you've got the private practice on the side. So you absolutely know.
Yes. And I think having the team is also holding me to a level of accountability that privately we can just push back. Oh, next week, tomorrow.
So it's someone else sort that out. I'm fine.
But now when I hold myself to that level of integrity, if I'm saying I'm going to do something, I don't want to disappoint them because obviously you have other issues with trust within your team. If you don't do what you say you're going to do, obviously not great as a leader within that team and ripples down to create all sorts of issues. So I think having that team really drives me in a positive way compared to being solo. Solo for so long, I think I just felt like I was floating a little bit too much. So it's given me a bit of a renewed energy having other OTs around me going, let's do some great stuff together.
That's wonderful. Which probably leads us into one of the reasons why you came and joined us, right? You wanted to chat and have a think about managing all the different roles that you've got, supervision and leadership and all those different areas. So is there a particular area you'd like to dive into now?
Probably something that I think I'm not so great at is the difficult conversations, which as a solo OT, don't come up.
I just avoid those the whole time.
They're just with myself. They're pretty easy, or even, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes there's difficult families, referrers, etc. But I think within the team, it requires a different approach.
Those external conversations are a lot easier because you're so confident with what you're saying in there, where it sounds like the things internally are line management things that you're having to hold hard lines on, things like that, that sometimes maybe you don't fully embrace. It's coming from higher above you and you're the person having to push downwards. And if it wasn't you in that role, you would be sitting next to them saying, this is so unfair. But also I have to be the bearer of what the rules are within the service.
Yeah. And it's partly that. It's also partly what the recent experience has been is that I want to elevate the team to a certain level of performance. And if I'm not seeing it, how do I let them know? And if they're not on board,
what do you do?
How do we try and find some shared mutual space in the middle to move forward? Because that's where I found it difficult to be a peer as well. You've got to sit in the office next to them, but then also
after having just had a cranky conversation.
Exactly. Yes. This is uncomfortable.
And I guess it's tricky as well because you've come back in seeking those connections, so probably over-connected. I know this because when I had my practice, we were all very close. And as it got older and I got less direct involvement with the team, it was a lot easier to separate out that personal versus professional chat. Have you done Michelle's leadership course, Michelle Bahari's?
I don't think I've done a leadership one. I've just done a supervision.
So the leadership one might give all of this framework. So you know how she really talks about that line management versus supervision. This is much more around containing that line management space and helping you to headspace some of those things. I dare say she chats about some of those harder conversations in there. But the first bit might be even acknowledging that line management versus supervision. So for some of those ones, maybe it is an intentional line management meeting and starting to use that language more effectively rather than just I'm your support, but this is a line management time. And I heard a chat a while ago where they were saying I think it was a psychologist saying it was not good to talk about using the hats, but it's still a great analogy, right? Like right now I'm in my manager hat and I don't really want to have this conversation, but I have to have this conversation from my role to your role about your performance. And so that could be something that you can think about where this is a line management meeting. The other thing, I was chatting with someone yesterday, much the same before we started, I've onboarded a new VA. And as part of the company that I'm going through, they set up this KPI dashboard and it's so strict. So it's like how often things should happen. Are they meeting that criteria? Are they not meeting? So like responding to emails within 24 hours, like all of those things that we're just talking about in job descriptions. And I was saying to this therapist yesterday, imagine if this is what we were going through with our therapists, like how explicitly you could give feedback if it was just, yes, you are doing this, or no, you're not doing this, and therefore these areas need to be improved. So that could be another thing to have a think about from a system perspective. Maybe it is just a quarterly check-in for everyone. And then the ones who need a little smidge more, have a more intentional check-in with a really clean way of giving, this isn't happening. This is what I need to see improve.
I think so. Over the experience of my 3 years, it has become apparent that a regular check-in is valuable because it creates a regular space instead of the, oh, she's called for a meeting thing.
Yeah.
I really tried to do that for those that I don't directly supervise because it still creates a conversation space. But probably that has been one of the things that gets pushed off because it's probably more eliminates a future problem. So if it's not a problem now, it's easier to bump.
Too hard to do at the minute.
Yeah.
But maybe thinking about that, because again, 12 across a month, you could cluster it and do it across a day. Doesn't need to be as long. You don't need to have an hour like supervision. It could be a half-hour check-in. Some you'll drop it back. Like it doesn't need to be that intensive. I think even quarterly would be a good starter, like just a quarterly check-in, and then the ones that need that extra, you pop into there. But you can even hear at the moment, you're picking up, doing that extra for those line management ones, but you're still having to line manage and supervise your supervision ones. And they're the ones this feedback is way clunkier for because you're trying to hold space as a great supervisor, but then having to like sneak in other things that need to be addressed. So they're probably the ones where, again, more intentionally to have that different touch point where it is a focus about, I don't know that the language is wrong saying performance. Like this conversation's about your workplace performance. That's what our line management conversation is, where in the other one is about your clinical performance. That's where we'll be chatting and I can support you with your clinical skills and professional skills.
Yeah, I think it's important where you talked about that dashboard. We've had a recent experience where I've gone to that level of creating a table, and this is what the standard looks like, and this is, and I'm looking at it and thinking about that now, going, I should actually make that transparent for everybody and not just in this one situation. I need to, you know, because when somebody else comes on board as well, like this is how we do things around here, and it really helps set that team culture, I think, in a positive way. So maybe I can even broaden that, is what I'm thinking.
And I think that's what, like this company, it was used as an onboarding tool. So it was to say, this is the expectation. Let's think about it from that competency perspective. And if we come back and think about the program that you're developing at the moment, how do we know that you know how to work in that program? And that's what that dashboard looks like in there. And then the indicators, if you're doing well, is that you're maintaining, being able to stay on top of your emails and getting your notes done and all of those other bits. So that could just be really nice to think about. I'll show you later what that actually looked like, because the way they presented it was on a very fancy Excel spreadsheet. It looked very professional with drop downs and all these other things. Yeah.
I love it.
Like quite visual, where the ones that I've made previously look crap. And they like this one, because it looks so objective, it doesn't look like it's me saying yes or no.
Sure. Yeah.
It is either a yes, like the box says yes or no.
My Excel brain is ticking.
I know. I was just thinking maybe you're really good at Excel and you can already picture how to make it fancy.
I'm sure I could dabble, but yeah, I do love a good, and when it's visually appealing, it's a bit more engaging. And as you say, if it's objective, it takes away that personal element and it's repeatable for everyone. Yours is the same as everyone else's. So,
and we used to do similar. So I'd made a similar, like the performance review was based on our SPEF. So that was that check-in. And we brought in a piece where it was that the therapist would self-score and then we would use that and do our own scoring off it. In that system, though, it was that same as you students, a scale of 1 to 5. It opened up a lot of open-ended questions. So it wouldn't be as quick and easy as this sort of idea, but similar concepts to think through those different professional value areas to go, okay, over, and then what does this look like? The expectation within this space. So that could be nice to have a bit of a think about and bringing that in. So coming back to the tricky conversations then, I've I've just seen as well that my colleague Tony Knight, have you ever come across her stuff?
Yes, I have done Tony's burnout session.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure she's running a how to have difficult conversations one coming up as well. I personally am having a chat with her about that in the next couple of weeks as well, because I think this is something that we find hard to have conversations that might hurt other people's feelings, even if we are on board with what we need to be saying. I know certainly in my very first number of years, I would be in cold sweats thinking about these hard conversations. And what I personally have had to do now is lean into the conversation before it's a problem. So I'm bringing it up before it needs to be addressed properly, because I was so bad at addressing it once it was. Where now I'm thinking more about expectations, clear expectations. Let's have these conversations. And I do a lot of, let me help you with that. Where in your role, in that line management role, that's not your role. Your role is just to say, hey, this needs to be done better. And in your supervision, they can talk about how to do it better, or in their other spaces, but not in that meeting time.
I feel like the approach that I've taken is obviously to be owning it. This is difficult for both of us.
Yep.
No one wants to have these conversations. We need to recognize if things aren't working, and we need to create space to explore it. And I really tried to come from that point of view that I'm here to support you, not to, it's not disciplinary. It's just tell me what you need. What can we do to make this easier, better? And so, it's, how do you know that you're doing it well? I don't know. I think, I didn't know Tony did a topic on conversations, and I know Michelle does as well. So it's, I probably should look at.
But it sounds where the breakdown point at the moment is in the structure of when, where, and how those conversations are happening. So that stuff would be really helpful, but the systems is where the breakdown point is happening at the minute. So we're getting it when it's become a big issue or something really big and bad has happened. And so it's not just a tricky conversation. It's like, I have to actually manage the problem as well as have the hard conversations. So I think that's where it's a little smidge murky, because you're trying to solve a pretty big scenario and then trying to hold their hand through that situation. So just to feel a bit more confident, it's not that you can't have hard conversations. It's that it's a difficult scenario that I have to fix whilst helping them to maintain their role during that time. Which is very different to someone just coming in and saying, sort that out, and then I'm back out.
It is. I think, the moments in between of the conversation, how do we stay in a positive space there too?
We brought in this thing as well because I fell into this trap where I was just always trying to help. We could do this. I could change this. Let me do this. And you're a little bit more rigid in the health space where you can't be as like responsive in that way. So I'd be like, yes, take some more days off, do this. But I wasn't documenting any of those adjustments either. And then we weren't checking in about whether those made an impact or not. So that's probably the other bit to think about. And this is because we're really lovely therapists, that sometimes we don't go, here's the support our workplace can offer you. And then we're going to check in a month or 2 weeks or whatever the time period is to see if your performance has improved from the supports we can offer. And that headspace helped me a bit more to take away from, because I can help lots of people do lots of things, but that's not my role.
I think we've attempted to do that circling back. Did we do what we say we're going to do?
So this ended up being a form that they had to tick and then be like, okay, so say I said, let's shuffle your hours so that you can have a Friday afternoon free because you're telling me that you're getting super overwhelmed. Then into whatever time we go, did that help? Like with that adjustment that I made, did that help? Because then from a HR perspective, further down the track, you have to be able to demonstrate all those adjustments that you've done. But again, it just makes it more objective because it's written on paper. It's not anything nasty or mean. It's just, this is what we can offer you. And I wonder, maybe thinking about some of these, it sounds like having a chat to someone in the HR space might be helpful to just clarify, because I found that really helpful navigating various different things over the years to go, what would you do if you weren't a super nice, kind therapist? Because you're not doing anything I'd be doing. Like you're coming in harder and faster than I would on most topics. And that makes it hard, us being in that middle space, that knowing what that's meant to look like can also be helpful again to give a bit more structure to, is it feedback? Is it performance management? Because I think for often, because it's so tricky to hire, and this happens in many spaces, we are nursing people through rather than going, that's actually not, like, you shouldn't be working here anymore. We've got to a point where this performance is not okay. But because of the workforce challenge, it's more like, how can I just keep on adjusting because, you're here and let's try and make this work best for you. So again, that HR support can be super helpful with that.
And I think it highlights too that in terms of role modeling as therapists, as a grade 1, circle back to that part, you observed a grade 2 doing things. You had a turn where you're being observed. I don't know, these difficult conversations. You don't get to see a HR person do it. And then,
Totally.
HR person, can you watch me do it? Like,
Yes.
you don't want to create these situations to role play them as such, but
Absolutely. But our HR used to, if you needed to, they could write your script.
Okay.
It always felt really weird and yucky because it was never aligned with how I would talk
Yes.
or anything like that. But there is a whole scope of people sitting in this space. I reckon you could find podcasts and things like that. But again, it's we need a scenario in your mind so that it can help you to really flesh it out and think about it. But yeah, I would imagine, again, Michelle's support in this space would be quite handy. Tony would be helpful. But I think, again, it comes back to the structure. So both of those are going to help you. But if we don't have the structure to lean back on as to what it looks like, then it's you being good at this, but then the structure's still falling down a little bit. So then you just have to have this hard conversation again and again.
Too often. Yeah. No, I like that. I like the idea about leaning in early. And I think that regular catches
it a bit easier.
Will really help create that opportunity for me to plant those seeds and address little things before they become big. I like that idea of that self-assessment tick boxes because we have talked about support. So I'm thinking now for my next conversations, okay, I need them to tell me what they've tried, because if they're not trying the things we come up with, that's another thing to talk about.
Absolutely.
And
Do you know they talk about this
dashboard.
a lot when they talk about millennial managers? Have you ever seen any of the social media stuff around
No,
that?
I haven't.
So they talk about, as a millennial, that we are so inclined to help because the generation above us, you would have got in trouble and we didn't like getting in trouble. So we never want to get anyone else in trouble. I'm like, oh my God, I resonate with this so much.
No, that's not me.
I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I hate getting in trouble. Don't you hate getting in trouble? But what that ends up leading to, and I've realized this so much about myself, that because I was being so kind by gently, I wasn't being clear. Like there was no clarity around what the expectation was. So then how could I ever come back and say you haven't met my expectation if it was like mixed in with, but it's okay. You do what you need to do. It's all right.
Yeah. I don't even know if that was a Brene Brown thing. The difference between clear and kind. I must have to go back to that, but it's a good point.
So tell me a bit about supervision. So what does your supervision structure look like? You've done some of Michelle's stuff. So I'd imagine you're sitting nicely in a bit of reflective practice with your team. Do you find sometimes that's tricky, particularly with the new project that you're doing where they're learning something new? So that reflective practice can be a little smidge trickier to use in supervision when you've got somebody who's needing more hands-on directive teaching.
Yeah, I would say that for the new area, we haven't created that space yet for that reflective conversation that's been very much in the mud still. But now being back from leave, I feel like I'll have that opportunity to do that. But typically it's a bit of a tightrope seesaw. I'm pushing, I think I'm pushing to be reflective, but I don't think I'm pushing enough. If they don't look like they want to go that way and keep it a bit more superficial, then I feel I know what Michelle has taught and the theory. And I think that's where my struggle is, like how you can't force vulnerability. You can't force them.
You can't force them to be reflectors. Like they may not be that type of learner. And that's what I've learned over the years as well, to go, oh, you don't think about this in the set. You're not going and thinking about this after this session. You just go, okay, see you. We don't move on. So a strategy that I have found really helpful, and I wonder whether it should still be helpful for you, but treat your supervisees as if they're a client. So, what's best practice? We would do with 50% of our clients, and then we would have to modify for the majority of the rest of our clients, because you could try and force a reflective approach or a coaching approach, but there are other confounding factors that mean that approach won't particularly work. So thinking around each individual, where they're at in their learning journey, what type of learner they are, allows you to be more intentional with the flipping of the way that you're supporting them. So instead of going, I need to push you into reflective practice, to go, I'd love you to go there, I actually don't think that would be helpful for you. And you can name this, you can lean into it and have a conversation about it. You could say, and sometimes this can be handy. We've had a chat in a lot of our supervision groups recently about that clear goal setting in supervision. I personally find it really tricky because I'm constantly reevaluating goals and supporting them with what's the priority, just like what happened to me in the therapy world. So it's difficult to do goals if they don't know what the possibilities and the options are. Sometimes that can be really hard. So your great reflectors and those pragmatic ones are coming in being like, I want to grow in here, and this is what I want to do. And then you've got those other ones that are like, I'm just here doing my thing. And when you first start, they can be super hard to support because you're going, I don't understand. Like I
Mm.
gave you like 20 things to follow up last week and you have not thought about any of those things. So tweaking and thinking more specifically about them like you would a client. How best do I support you? And that might even be you sitting and thinking about a little profile for each of them. Like, are they a visual learner from what you've learned?
Mhm.
Are they someone who will go and follow through and read a book or look something up? Or are they somebody who needs more of an answer from you? So thinking about that can just take the pressure off you to be everything to everybody, but make it clearer to use the skill set that you've got in a more intentional way. The other bit that I really like doing is, and I'm not very good at it, I forget to do it, but more, what do you need from me right now? Do you need direction? Do you need me to tell you what to do? Do you just need to have a vent? Are you just really overwhelmed? We just need to have a little bit of an easy session at the minute. Do you need to learn about something in particular? So Michelle calls that contracting piece, but sometimes we have to push it a bit harder to say, okay, like you've got lots of questions. What actually are you needing help with, and how would you like the help from me?
Yeah, I think I've come to that conclusion. And so what I've tried recently was, I think that Michelle had like 4 questions to measure the success of the outcome. So I was having people complete that electronically after our session. And then when I'm looking at the results, it's no, I think they're just being too nice. I don't feel like I'm being transformational, but they're saying, yeah, good.
No.
Okay, I don't like that. It's not no point in capturing that. With one of my supervisees, I've asked them to tweak their template and put that prompt, what do you want out of the session today?
Cool.
So that's going to be in play this year when we resume our sessions. And so we're really trying to build those prompts into the template.
Yeah.
And I probably went with this particular therapist because she's already quite reflective and looks big picture.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be easier to introduce that.
Yeah.
But as a way of measuring, are you getting out of this session what you want at the end? Because otherwise, I don't feel like then it was worth my time or your time if we've just had a chat about things.
But that's tricky. I'm going to show you this model. So this model is called the situational leadership model. So this can be helpful, I think, to help understand your different approaches and why sometimes I found I was in that similar spot when I'd have those higher therapists, more experienced therapists, and I'd be going, what am I even offering you? You know this, but that's where the reflective practice should be perfect. That's when I should be able to hold space in that space and it be really good. I just didn't have the language around why that was beneficial and why that was helpful. And I was assuming it wasn't helpful when actually they're coming back and they're paying to come back. So obviously they're finding some sort of value in it. But the other language that's helpful is this situational leadership, where they've got your 4 quadrants. And we've talked about this in this pod this season, but your very new learners need a lot more of a directive session. So you're telling them what to do. You are giving them the rules and the roadmap, and I would do it like this, but you could do it this different way, where sometimes we jump too high for them. So we're actually coming up and going, what do you think? And they're like, literally have no idea. I have absolutely no task knowledge. So how could I have a reflective thought around that? So that's helpful. You don't have heaps of those early learners at the moment, but this difference between coaching and supporting. So the second level being, I still need a fair bit of direction and a fair bit of support, but you're in more of a coaching role. Like, you do know what you're doing now. I'm just helping you to follow through with the way that you've learned how to do those things. Then it moves up to just more supportive. So you're taking a lot of that direction off and you're just supporting. And then it gets to delegation. And this can be helpful just to pull out because you've got such vast different skills across the team. So again, think where they're sitting so you can be more intentional about which hat you're wearing with them at what time. Is that helpful, looking at that?
No, I'm not familiar with that one. So it'll be good for me to go back to. And
my colleague Claire Britton found it a couple of years ago and said to me, she's like, oh my God, this is so helpful. This makes so much sense. And it does. And you don't have a lot of those early career ones, but it's still helpful to use and to go, where does this sit? Because the other bit that I was going to say, I had to modify my supervision, I guess, the framework, the template that I used, because it wasn't direct, because it was very reflective. And so many therapists, that's really hard. Like, I would do it with people and they'd put a closed-ended yes, no answer on it.
How do I explore that?
Interesting. So the other bit we added in was professional goals. What are those professional goals that we're working towards? And for some therapists, like we've said, they'll come and they'll be like, this is something I find hard. I want to work on this. This is something where others will need that 4th window look in and you go, you know what I've noticed? Time management's a bit tricky. Let's talk about that. But let's actually have that as a professional goal that you're working towards. So it gives us, again, something more tangible for growth, but that you're not just feeling like you're having sessions for no reason. There's an intention that you're seeing progress forward.
I think that's what I look for as a supervisor when I go back through the notes that I make. Are we having the same things?
Yeah.
Are we seeing growth? Is there a change? But I want them to see that as well. It's not about
and
me.
I try and reflect that in. So I've noticed
That's
this week you're saying this, last week that looked like this. But I was chatting with another therapist recently, and in their service, they do like a summary of supervision services over a 6-month or 12-month period. And so we were talking about how, so they were at that point were having to manually document, like putting this report together. We worked on here and we got to here. I was thinking, how cool would that be if you could put your summaries in like an AI summary and have it just analyze and go, here were the core themes that were discussed and here's the progress that we saw over that time. Because I do think if you could just have something objectively look at what you chatted about, you would see that more naturally. But when we have to think about it, we're like, did we see anything? What did that look like?
I've dabbled a bit with the GPTs and putting some reflective questions in there. So maybe I could share that with my team. I've just used it for myself.
You may not have heard me say, but I use this. So in Zoom, and then Zoom does an AI summary. And it's honestly been the biggest game changer for supervision, right? Because imagine all the stuff that I would tell someone in an hour.
Yes.
Poor little baby therapist, be next week. And I wasn't sending them notes after. They were taking their own notes. Sometimes we'd be on that shared document. Now I've got that Zoom summary that I can then send and be like, hey, here is a summary of what we spoke about. So you can come back to it later.
It's amazing though, isn't it? Like it's so helpful.
And then you go,
oh my God, she did say that.
Yeah, but then, I actually did tell you not to do that thing. And you said I didn't say that, but Zoom heard me as well. So we definitely had that conversation.
Very true. And I think too, then, as you said, over time, you put those together and it does paint a clearer picture of, okay, this is where we're at. So I wonder how we can include, because I'm very much pro AI. Let's use it in ways that add to what we do, not take away.
Are you using AI at work at all?
No. Not from an organization point of view. I'm using it when I'm giving performance feedback. So for our annual reviews, I collate everyone's feedback, de-identify it, put it in.
Cool.
And they give me this nice little summary, and then it's, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. But okay, I think you've captured it nicely. Thank you.
Because you might potentially you could just do Zoom and have it recording while you're having your session together. If you are face-to-face, or you could push your supervision sessions so that they are more online rather than face-to-face if you're split across different areas as well.
Yeah, there's usually a mixture.
So then that makes it, I like the level of depth it captures compared to what my notes used to say. Much better, much better overview of what we talked about for me to reference and reflect on, and also for me to be able to give to them. So could just be something to have a think about, whether even that little tweak might be handy.
For sure.
All right. That brings us to the end of our conversation. We could just keep talking forever. We've got so many interesting areas, but we do normally wrap up with a bit of a note to self. So let's go when you came back into this leadership role. What would you tell yourself that you know now? What would be some kind words to yourself when you decided to come back in and move into this sort of management-y leadership space?
I think it's been as I expected. I think I came in well aware what I was signing up for, the good and the bad. Obviously, I worked in the organization already, so I'd had my ears open. Is this a team I want to be a part of? And I saw that, as any team, there's good and bad. So I don't know, I'd probably just say trust yourself. Like it just felt right to apply for it, and it's turned out the way the opportunities that I've had, it's turned out as I expected.
So cool.
So I'm really happy with that choice, and I think I did all right.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it really met what you were professionally seeking. So you were actually seeking something with taking that step. It wasn't an accidental step. It wasn't it was intentionally, I want to get back into here, but I also want to make sure I'm stepping up professionally and growing still.
Absolutely.
Not just coming back to something I've already got the skills at and can do in my sleep, but I'm getting all my professional growth markers going.
Definitely. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid of a challenge. And just give things a go is probably what I would say to myself. Get in there and give it a go.
Well, thank you, Jane. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been great.
The OT Coaching Confidential podcast exists to support occupational therapists to think clearly, feel less alone, and take meaningful steps in their work. If this conversation resonated for you, take a moment to notice what stood out. Have a think about the takeaways from this session and what you might be able to apply in your own personal or professional practice. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, head on over to the otcoach.au. Inside here, you'll find resources, workshops, trainings, lots of different things, including some new freebies that we've just set up. I've also got the OT Coach Academy, where we have the Pediatric Hub, as well as a brand new Business Owners Hub, and this will be for group practice owners to come together and share and learn. Please note that the information shared in this podcast is general in nature and is not intended to replace individualised advice. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.